joining between your seriously important work you're doing out there. We really appreciate and thank you for coming and talking to us. As I told you, we are a bunch of folks, professionals, business people, and some students also, who just want to do our bit. So it all started, so when we thought, as you rightly pointed out, even one person helped, one life saved, can mean a lot. So that's what it is, so thanks again to come down here. So doctor, if you can just give a small short introduction, so you said you've been actually on the COVID wards, so that we will know your workplace and what you've been doing and how stressful it is for you, which we all know that, but if you can hear from you on that.
Yeah, Doctor, just a small request. I'm recording the session. I hope you are all right.
Yeah, I'm not, no problem at all.
Yeah, because a lot of people have not joined, and maybe I will share the recording with them.
Yeah, actually,
Sure.
our Rotary meeting is also today, but we did not want to wait for this session because this is like time critical also. So we thought we'll just go ahead in spite of that meeting.
Yeah, this is going to be a very short and crisp session so that we get into the grind later.
Yes.
Just to give a bird's eye view of what's happening in there, so that you all know and aware of where are the hurdles that we are going to have and how to get about. So first of all, at the outset, I would like to thank all of you have me, and I am Dr. Amina. I am a physician, family physician, and I've also done critical care fellowship and also a diabetology PHFI foundation course. So typically you can say I'm into critical care and diabetology and also a physician. I work as physician and critical care intensivist in PD Hinduja Sindhi Hospital. And I go in the also a physician in Alamein Hospital in Cunningham Road, and also a physician in Apurva Hospital, which is in Indiranagar. So I was also into CareFit, which is a part of CultFit. You all will know that CultFit is a huge thing before COVID. So CultFit was into screening of primary healthcare. And what I have been exposed to is being a family physician, seeing that catching people early in their disease, early in age. Say suppose a 30-year-old has got early as a diabetic or having cholesterol is more important than or equally important as treating a person who is having a heart attack at 50 years or 60 years. So CareFit was all about that, where we screened a lot of youngsters who were not having any symptoms, but they were obese, they were into junk food, and they were into depression. And what we found out was through all the screenings we did that they were having early diabetes, early cholesterols. So CareFit was more into picking such people and reverting them into healthy individuals, because they were the future of India. And then we also treated the elderly population for heart attacks, for all the other diseases, especially diabetes. So now that given that I came out of CareFit because when COVID started, I wanted to be in the front line. Given that I have skills of critical care, I did not want to be in the back seat doing online consultations. So I came out of CareFit willingly, and I joined back my ICU in Hinduja Hospital. And the COVID ward opened up, and we were there in the front line. And last year's COVID and this year's COVID, there is a huge difference. Of course, the ignorance is always there, it's still there, and the stubbornness. Hello, am I still there?
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
there,
yeah,
doctor.
Hello.
yeah.
Go on,
Yes,
Yes.
you are
doctor.
there.
So as I said, yes. So people are still ignorant of the importance of
Dr.
Uh,
Amina, we can't hear you. You might want to log in, log out and log in again.
uh, Didi, you can just tell her. Probably you can call her.
No, she's joining again.
Okay.
She just logged out.
Okay. Okay.
Welcome back, doctor.
I'm so sorry. I think there was a drop in connection suddenly.
No
So I
problem.
was saying that there is a difference, a huge difference between the COVID we saw last year and the COVID we are seeing this year. So last year's COVID, there was a very typical fever, and there was some cough, some throat pain, and tiredness, breathlessness, very, very bad breathlessness. And they would come to us. We could even see them walking, and we could say that, you know, this is COVID. This year, the scenario is completely different. People walking, talking, are having COVID. They absolutely don't know about their oxygen levels. There is no symptom. Uh, you know, they can even be completely healthy, sitting and talking with everybody, sleeping, eating like normal days, and still they can be having an oxygen level which could be even 80 or 70%. And that is extremely scary because you know, every given day their oxygen levels drop, and at 50 to 40 level of oxygen they suddenly collapse and nobody knows. So you can say it is like you know, how zombies are walking all around. It's become the scenario is something like that, where everyone's walking with an oxygen of say 70, 60, and they just don't know. So that is why this COVID this year is really scary. We really don't know who's the person we are meeting, and what are they carrying with them. But given that, the typical symptoms still stay. If a patient is say if a person comes with a fever and a throat pain in this season, say suppose from February to this month, anytime, if a patient would have come to us with throat pain and fever, we would definitely look for COVID. And also if they come with tiredness, so apart from only fever and cough or breathlessness, if they just come with tiredness, say suddenly you were okay, you know, yesterday and today you're feeling very, very tired, we check your oxygen levels immediately. And anything less than 97, that is 96, 95, 94, anything less than 97, we look into screening for COVID. Now coming to screening of COVID, you know, that is where I need you all to help in, because as I said, people are just walking around with oxygen levels of 90 or 60 or 70. We need you all to spread the word through your you know, resources, where we want every household to have an oximeter, a pulse oximeter in their homes. So with whatever resources you can, if that is possible, every household, if they have an oximeter in their homes, and if everybody, you know, elderly or young population, anyone, at least once a day, if they check their oxygen levels, and anything less than 97, report to us, or report to any doctor in their locality or at home or their relatives. Any doctor has to be, it has to be reported to. And if there is a subsequent drop of oxygen from 96 to 95, then definitely go in for screening for COVID. So that is one step of screening early, because people who are now helter-skelter are people who are whose oxygen is 70 and 60, and we are not able to get bed for these individuals. So the whole question arises, why did we even leave them to go to an extent of 70 or 60? So, you know, the step that comes, that intervention that comes in here is that we need to screen everyone, every individual. No one is going to be, you know, even today we have seen a patient who has taken 2 doses of COVID vaccine get infected. So really no one is immune to this infection. Even though you're vaccinated, not vaccinated, even though you're a bodybuilder or your immunity is really good, you're taking all the Ayurvedic or you know, all the whatever the immunity boosters are, no one is immune to this mutant virus. And we need to screen every individual in every household. So we need to spread the word that please get a pulse oximeter and keep checking oxygen levels once a day. And it hardly takes 30 seconds to check this oxygen. So you all just have to check once a day. And if you suddenly see that there's a consistent drop the whole day, you have to meet your clinician or family physician or anybody who's around and seek help, because this could be COVID, and seeking early intervention will save many lives. So we cannot do anything with 70 and 60 oxygen levels. The quality of life is already gone. So, we really don't know the recovery, because we still are going to get data, because the COVID is just from last year. We really don't have enough data to see how these people having oxygen of 60 or 70 are going to do for the next 5 years. So I would really, want intervention from all the volunteers. If we can spread the word, starting from your own household to, if you can Instagram or if you can Facebook, this is your oxygen level for today. It's really good. Thumbs up, something like that, and make people aware that, like measuring your oxygen levels every day is as important as brushing your teeth every day till this nasty virus is out of our lives. Now, second is, since you all are going to help us in trying to place these individuals who are having COVID into the hospitals, whoever require the beds. First is who requires hospitalization is important. So not everybody requires hospitalization. I would just say anyone whose oxygen level is dropping to 90, 92. 92 would be a cutoff for elderly, and any young individual where it is 91, 90 would require hospitalization. We are discharging patients with anybody who is around 90, 91. So I don't think 90, 91 will call for any immediate hospitalization, but definitely it'll call for immediate intervention by a doctor at the house level. And if starting medications for the 2-3 days, if it doesn't improve to 92, then definitely we would want to admit this person and give them special injectable medications. Now, most importantly, not everyone knows what COVID does. They all know COVID causes drop in oxygen, but no one knows at the molecular level what happens. So just to say in simple terms, what COVID does is it thickens the blood, and say suppose it thickens the blood in your lungs, oxygen level drops. If the same blood thickens in the heart, you got a heart attack. If the same oxygen level thickens in the brain, you get a stroke. And what COVID does is it does all the three. But what is more prevalent and prominent is a drop in oxygen, because your lungs completely is filled with blood supply, and all the blood in the lungs are thickened in COVID. So we have to give blood thinners to these individuals whose oxygen is less than 90, 91. We have to admit them and give them injectable blood thinners, so that the entire process of this chain of making the blood thick by the virus is broken, and we can revert them back to normalcy. So 2 points which I have just put in here is, one is early screening of every household, every individual, every morning or every evening, once a day. Second is the COVID causes blood thickening, and that is why your oxygen levels fall. So we need to pick up these individuals whose oxygen is 91, 92 to hospitals. And that is where we would even need your volunteers to, go about with the BBMP hand holding them, or they hand holding us. And what about the people who are less than 97 oxygen? 97 is normal one. But if it is less than 97, but about 91, 92, yes, we can definitely please put them across to any doctor across who's treating COVID patients. And early treatment for these individuals, guaranteed they are going to be reverted to normalcy. There is no way that they are going to get worsened even with treatment. Early picking up these individuals is going to save many lives and many households. Coming to BBMP and us. So again, there's a lot of difference. Hello?
Doctor, we can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Go on.
So again, there's a lot of difference between how BBMP helped us in the previous year and how it's helping us in this year. Basically, there's here because everyone is exhausted. Resources are exhausted. Oxygen cylinders, in a serious note, is exhausted. Today, in fact, the last week we had to choose between whom to give oxygen and whom to not, depending on the age, because we had to let go a very senior person because we had only one cylinder, and oxygen is seriously, at the lower end at every district, every corner of the city. We really don't know which mafia is working here. There are a lot of mafias which are working, making the oxygen supply, really to beg for. And important injections like remdesivir go out of stock. Remdesivir is a very life-saving injection for COVID, where we give this injection for oxygen levels 86 and below. So even remdesivir has gone out of market and being sold. Actually, it's being sold for 25 or 40,000, but the actual rate is 800 rupees. So you can see that a lot of people are eating up these supplies for their own selfish means. So that is why also early intervention of people at 95 level of oxygen is important, so that we don't have, we have a very minimal population at this level that require oxygen. That is why we need early intervention. We have to concentrate mainly on picking up people early and intervening, and then of course going into helping BBMP. So last year BBMP, what they used to do was, suppose a patient A was positive, they would do the RT-PCR test, and the test would come positive, and the BBMP would proactively give something called a BU number, and the BU number would be given to the zonal region. Zonal region people will call back, telling that, did you get a hospital? Did you get a bed? Is some doctor seeing you? And that would be that was something that was done last year, which cleansed the whole virus very, very nicely. But this year, what has happened? Suppose this patient A is gone and tested positive. He just gets a SRF number. There is no BU number generated. There is no phone call made to this patient. He's just left on his own, saying that he's positive and he doesn't know now what to do. So for what do we do for these patients? What we need to know is, how is their oxygen level? Are they having any heart attack or diabetes, thyroid problems, cholesterol problems, or any fits? So these are the main things that we need to know. And suppose they fall into the category of heart attack or diabetes, then they need more priority, of course, but equally everybody needs, because COVID can kill anyone, right from young age to old age, because this time's COVID is really nasty. So given that they're not given, given that they're positive, they're only given a SRF number. Now what we need to do is that this particular person is coming from a particular zone. Okay, so I have been checked. I have checked it in say MG Road. I come from that zone of MG Road, and that zone, these zones are into east, west, central zone, etc. Helplines are given for each area. So you call up the area from which the test is done, and you tell, and a helpline person proactively picks it up. Actually, within 2 minutes, someone picks up in the control room, and you have to tell the individual that such a person with SRF number of whatever, like say 123, with aged of say 76 years, also having oxygen of 80%, requiring oxygen bed, is positive. Please help us with the bed. And then the zone takes up your requirement, takes up your inquiry, registers you. And then you have to also tell them to give you the BU number. They will generate the BU number. So until now, you're not got the BU number. So only when you call the zonal people, you are generated the BU number. And after the BU number has got the person, the zone, a doctor. Hello?
Yes, doctor, please go
Hello?
on.
Yeah. So after the zonal person takes your call, they request you to wait for a minute or at least few hours. And then some doctor is going to call you for the requirement of bed and where the bed is available. They'll have a discussion with you, and you will be given the bed. So this is what is the narration that the zonal people give. But in ground reality, till now we have had 15 patients who have been registered with BBMP. We have called the zonal people, and the zonal people very nicely, proactively told us that the doctor will call up and will tell you the bed status, and you'll be allotted a bed. But 15 patients are still waiting. It's been 4 days, and we still didn't have a bed for them. So we had to get into the private, we all had to volunteer. Again, there were another volunteers just like you all who grouped together, and then we had to sort out individually, calling individual hospitals.
Doctor, we lost your audio. Dr. Amina? Hello, doctor.
I think she lost connection again.
Okay, I think she's still inside the hospital.
Mm.
You want to just ping
They're
her?
asking them for beds. And what I'm saying, the bottom line is that
Doctor,
be there,
we
because
missed you
right
for
now there's a lot of
last
exhaustion
1
band.
minute.
And last year's band, there was police said there's absolutely.
Doctor, hello.
You're muted, doctor.
Yes, can you hear me, madam?
Yeah, now we can hear you, but since for last 2 minutes we didn't hear anything.
Oh my God. Okay. So I was telling, did you get to know about the BU number?
Yeah, you just you were talking about that there are 15 people who were still looking for beds
Yeah.
even after getting the BU number, and then you were saying that what happened after that? What did you do?
So we proactively made groups, just like how you volunteered. We got volunteers in, and we grouped into somebody, getting into the calling the zone, the zonal numbers, and getting the BU number, and then putting across to BBMP doctors proactively. Not everybody came back to us because we had some personal contacts with doctors, so we could get into some 2-3 hospitals. But largely we had to individually call private hospitals and individually talk about a patient and get them into, like, just like any other case. So BBMP really did not help us and is not helping us in any way here. They are just putting pressure on hospitals to allocate some beds for them, and that's about it. There's nothing much we are getting out of BBMP. Nevertheless, we have to be in that format because anybody, even for insurance purposes, they will ask you the BU number. So we have to register the people through the BU number and individually call private hospitals. So what we did was, like, I'm from Cottons, Bishop Cotton, so we are having a separate group of volunteers, and as physician, I'm heading the group. So there are 2-3 mini groups in this where we are segregating patients. Each one is taking 2-3 patients, and we are calling the zonal numbers, and we are generating the BU number. We are sincerely waiting for calls from the BBMP. Few patients get calls, few patients don't get calls. Nevertheless, we still continue trying to register with BBMP, and privately we start filtering out and try finding out from private hospitals as to which bed is going to get empty, when are the discharges, if there is any oxygen bed, any ventilators available. So we are really doing it very proactively from our side, not getting any help from the BBMP as of now. But given that, we still have to, as we really don't know when BU number will be useful for us, so we still have to go through the format of generating the BU number from the zones. If the patient already has a BU number with the SRF number on the first day, then it's very good. But if you do not, then we have to generate the BU number. So where do you all, where you all can help us is in the same way. It will be that if a patient is approaching you for help, for getting help, then you would have to ask them their name, their age, how much is their oxygen level, their SRF number, and their BU number, which is generated by BBMP, and what is the oxygen requirement and which locality they are in. And so I would suggest that you group into mini groups where few will take this information. So not one person is going to do everything. It's just that the first person takes in this information, and this information is given to person B, and B person takes this information and starts working on 3 hospitals, and the third person starts working with the same information on 3 hospitals. So there is a chance of increasing a bed probability for this person, and sooner the better you will get a bed from any of these hospitals, because you're on the go, you're trying to keep checking every time, and even the person at the other end of the hospital knows that there's someone seeking a bed proactively, and when there's a bed empty, they will quickly tell you that yes, you can, the bed is going to be booked for you. But given that it is a very it's going to be a very heartening task, because you will get no's and a lot of no's from hospitals because of some selfish motives of their own. But we can't give up easily, because the COVID is literally eating up the entire population and reducing the productivity of every individual. And it could be tomorrow anybody, and it could be tomorrow us. It could be maybe a few of us are going to be left if we just let it go. So I think this is a way out, that we have to go all out, because the government is literally least bothered. They just want to play safe now, and I don't think we are going to get anything from them now. So you have to take care of your own selves. Now, given that there will be some patients who will be seeking help from you till they come across or till they get to a doctor. For example, if a 95% oxygen person will tell you what is to be done. So what you need to tell them is to take deep breaths. Take deep breaths every hour. Take something called a spirometer, or at least blow balloons. Blowing balloons and leaving them blowing balloons is a very easy thing to do to keep their lungs open. Hydration is the key because COVID causes thickening of the blood. So as much as we can hydrate. So what we recommend is 3 liters of water every day for this individual, unless they have a heart failure. Heart failure patients should not drink more than 2 liters of water every day. That is extremely important to be told. But if they are all okay and they just have sugar, BP, etc., 3 liters of water every day is very, very important to keep their blood as watery. And no tea, no coffee, no soda, no alcohol. All these four can cause dehydration. So they have to literally, be off it. Not even little. I mean, we will not even recommend small cup. So be off it until complete recovery has happened, and improve proteins and improve vitamin C. So they can start having Zincovit safely. You all can give Zincovit. Any preparation of multivitamin with zinc is going to help recovery, because the cells which need to fight this infection need zinc. So you need to give capsules with zinc and multivitamin. And vitamin C is important for immunity and killing, also to prevent the replication of this virus. So vitamin C is very important. So these three things, hydration, vitamin C, and zinc with multivitamins, are very important for recovery. And you all can safely tell them to start taking it until they approach a doctor, along with deep breathing exercises. No lying down. So what these people think is they're positive, they are all sick and they have to lie down. But that is the worst thing that they can do, because when they lie down, the lungs are going to collapse. The lungs are going to just, they're going to close inside. So they need to be up and they need to keep breathing well so that the lungs do not collapse, because the more it collapses, there will be some bacteria sitting in, and that can multiply and cause secondary infection. So we need to see that they are all up and about, but not doing anything strenuous, not doing any extra exercises, just normal activity at home, and hydrate themselves. And of course, meet a doctor, or have a teleconsult, or whatever screening as early as possible. So this is what I can, I would probably just conclude in that early screening is important. And what is COVID? What does COVID do? We need every household to have oximeters, at least one oximeter where everyone can measure their oxygen levels. Anything less than 97 is not good. Persistently less than 97, they can even plot a graph through the day and show the graph how it was every 2-3 hours. And if it's dropping, then yes, they need to seek help. And who needs admission is less than 92 or even 91 oxygen levels. Remdesivir is given for 86 and below, or who are really, whose state is really terrible. But remdesivir is not given for anybody above 90 or even about 80. Even 88, we don't give remdesivir. So that's a very precious injection. And in the long term, what's going to help is hydration, zinc, vitamin C, of course, staying positive, because stress is going to kill them before COVID does. And what about ignorance? Ignorance is the worst thing. We have had today also 2 patients. Typically, COVID did not want to take the test, did not want to take medicines, because they thought that they had some curd the previous day, and that is why they have low oxygen. But outrightly, they were COVID, and they were ignorant. And these are educated class. So we really need to make people aware of this disease, and get them out of their cocoons, and really arrogance, I would say. Ignorance, arrogance, everything together, and stay positive. And we need to, as um, our host rightly said, we need to take the phone and call the next person to say, hello, hi, I'm there. Don't worry. You have my back, your back, and don't worry about anything. Anything is needed, just give a phone call. Even if you want to talk it out. Many of our doctors also, doctors and nurses, they're very depressed because they are in the forefront and they are seeing this every day. They can't even go back to their families and hug their families freely. I have a 2.5-year-old kid. I cannot go and hug him freely. So all of us are having our own, depressive episodes. But I think a call from another person to say hi and giving them that positive reaffirmation, reassuring them that everything is going to be fine. I think that is going to be a long
Thanks so much, doctor. And definitely we would love to talk to you, all of you doctors, and so because you've been doing a lot of work, so probably that can be also part of our work as volunteers. Very happy to do that. Doctor, a couple of things so when you are telling I'll tell the pain points that we face.
Yes.
Yeah, reaching out to doctors, so I don't think leave the other people we people we were always thinking, okay, we are a privileged set of people. That's what we keep telling our kids, and we are in Rotary and multiple other areas. We find it so difficult to reach out to doctors today. So how do we get to these doctors? Who are these people? So who are they? Where is their bench? How do we reach to them? I mean, this is just much before reaching to the hospital also. So because in fact, this whole thing got triggered to me over the last 4 days. I must have called every night.
What has happened, Sudeep? We are sadly in a generation which is very, very selfish, and the people out here are working out of passion. So you who are working here in the field are only out of passion, and the people who are maybe compulsion, and
Mhm.
people who are chosen to stay back, of course, could be family reasons, personal reasons, but mainly the fear also that there is some person who is at stake at their homes, and they have a tendency to carry the infection to them. So no hard feelings to them. But literally, the people who are there in the field are passionate, and they're on the go. So they're already taken, and they're so busy that I really don't know how. See, I've started treating patients from 5 o'clock morning,
Mhm.
and I go until 11 o'clock night or even 12 o'clock night, midnight. I have to stabilize patients again on the phone. So I think I would not say anything about myself, but population like me are a little scarce, but they are still there. The only thing is you will not be able to get through them easily because they are busy with some of the other patient. It's not that they don't want to treat, but they're already busy with some patient or other patient. So what I would want to do is, I would want some volunteers from all of you, where some basic training of some medical knowledge will be given. Not that the patient should not say that, oh, you're not a doctor, and they dare not tell that, because volunteers are great in their own selves. So some, like how I said, catch people who are um, having 95 level of oxygen, 90, 93, 94. So these people are still sitting in their homes, not knowing that they are going to go into some kind of catastrophe in later down the days, where oxygen is not going to be there, and they're going to be helter-skelter running for hospitals. No BU number, BBMP is not going to help them. So we should, I think the main agenda here should be, how are we going to do that, apart from even getting hospital beds for the people who are already registered, because that is going to be a task, very different task. We have two tasks here. One is screening the individuals at households, making them aware that something called oximeter is there. It's just 600 to 700 rupees. Please go get it. One household, please. And every day, please check your levels. And if there's anything less than 96 or anything 95, please get back to us. We know doctors. We are going to put across to doctors. Or if you know doctors, please go to them, because this is going to be. So the first step is to tell them to go. Not even to come to a doctor. Please tell them to go. And definitely they will go to the doctor whom they're going to, or they will ring up the doctor they have been seeing. And that first step that you're going to trigger is going to make a difference to their lives.
Okay. Doctor, quickly, I'll jump into something else, which is one of the common things which we get. You are mentioning about remdesivir, and then there is this plasma replacement thing which is happening. So there are mixed notes on this, that plasma therapy is not really helping to that extent. Your quick comment on that, and also on the remdesivir, so how acute is this shortage, or how chronic is it? So is it coming back? Because
So remdesivir is actually a black market. It's gone into the black market mafia thing, where now people are selling it for 22,000, 30,000. Takers are there because there's so much desperation. Given that remdesivir actually works wonders, it works great. But again, it doesn't do much for people who are above 90, because already their level is above 90. So remdesivir does nothing great. But if the level is around 80, oxygen levels of 80, 70, then remdesivir is a wonder drug, and that is why it's out of the market. And definitely, I'll tell you it's out of the market. But how do you procure it? Through correct means is you have to give. It's not given to individuals. It is authorized and given out to hospitals.
Okay.
So you have to register the name, which hospital is requiring this injection for which patient, what is the oxygen level, and you have to register this to the health officer or the BBMP, and they will send across to the hospital that the patient registered. Remdesivir will come. Now it's come back to rotation through the
Okay.
health officers and through BBMP. It's come back, but yes, we had a huge mafia which was working last 2 weeks. There was remdesivir not anywhere found except in the black market, but slowly it is coming back to circulation, and it's a very important injection.
So it is still the hospital which raises the requirement, and then
Yes.
it comes to the nodal health office.
Yes, nodal officer. Yes, the individual cannot procure it from a pharmacy.
But it's heartening to know at least it is coming back, because there's
Yes.
a paranoia about this thing.
Now,
So-
coming to plasma therapy, it all depends on the individual. If the individual has really become, say, critical,
Mhm.
I think plasma therapy will not work, because critical means also the heart is affected. We are just buying time by giving plasma therapy. Early plasma therapy is like how, say, suppose remdesivir is given at the early stage of 86, 84 saturation. But given to choose, we do not give remdesivir and plasma therapy together. Given to choose one among these two, remdesivir is a better choice. I really don't know why still people give both of it. It doesn't work. Plasma therapy works for few people, depending on I think genetics also works. And if they're having sugar, BP, or heart attack in the previous episodes before they got COVID, then even plasma therapy usually it doesn't help them much.
Mhm.
So it's a very individual thing about plasma therapy being effective, not effective. It's a very individual thing. Also, it depends upon the antibody level of the person who's donating it. So lesser the antibody, it's just like giving water, through the injection. So we really need a high antibody titer person to donate the antibody, and then we have to see how the patient recovers. So it's all about even the donor who's giving and the recipient who's taking it, and how the recipient's other problems are: sugar, high, heart attacks. All these people are not going to do good with plasma therapy. But given a normal, say, 35-year-old who's become really sick, even remdesivir has not worked, and the donor has high antibody and is given, then we can always bank on plasma therapy.
Okay. Thanks, doctor. Doctor, but we still have not sorted out, how do we get to the hospital? Because even last night, me and another fellow volunteer here, we must have tried at least a dozen plus or 2 dozen almost, calling
No,
people.
see, the problem is we are not equipped well. We last COVID has not taught any one of us any lesson.
Okay.
So my hospital is full, another hospital is full. Even if you reach the hospital, you cannot reach the bed.
Mhm.
Now,
Okay.
that's what, as I told you, why have I been stressing on point one, that we need to screen people early. I don't want them to reach the hospital.
Okay.
We are letting them reach the hospital because they have come to 88 saturation or 70 saturation. And that is when when this entire Chakraview begins, where remdesivir, Fabiflu, Fluwir, oxygen. So we really need. Yes, madam.
No, go ahead, please.
As I said, we need to intervene aggressively and early. It's like, you are seeing a weed coming up the grass.
Correct.
Or coming up the mud, and it's going to eat up the entire plant. So why are we waiting for it to climb the plant? We have to cut it at the root. So we need to get individuals as early as possible to doctors. A lot of teleconsults are available. A lot of doctors are doing very well on teleconsultations. They have to just monitor through 2 weeks with the teleconsultations, and they'll be good. But
Okay.
the only thing is, we have to take the horse to the water and tell them that you are thirsty, you need help.
Okay.
So,
Doctor, any
I
particular-
have a question, doctor. That what is the best way to reach out to many people? Because now you are asking us to get to everyone. You said that you also are heading another volunteer group. What are they doing to educate people? Because I understand that's the most important thing at the moment.
So I think it begins with your own selves, and Instagram is a huge thing, Facebook is a huge thing. So you just have to post your oxygen levels every day and say that you're good. It's good, and there's a good level, and just to put a note that anybody less than 97, seek out doctors' help or doctor's opinion. So I think it just once in a way, like how there was there are challenges. There were challenges on Facebook at one time. And then there were so many things. Like it's like a hashtag. You should make a hashtag.
Yeah, got it. Through social media, basically, you are saying.
Absolutely, yes. Social media,
Yeah,
everyone
yeah.
is on YouTube now, even
Sure,
right from the elder to the young. So
sure.
you should make a hashtag, my oxygen level or something like that.
Yeah.
My oxygen is good. So you should make something like that and make it viral, and it should be. I'm sure we will get not many people on the platforms of teleconsultations coming early, screening early, and this entire catastrophe in the hospitals that's happening, breaking everything. And sadly, even doctors and nurses are getting infected today. Already 2 nurses are infected, yeah, and we already have 2 doctors who are infected. So the entire system is going to crumble if even the healthcare is going to go. Imagine if there are no doctors and nurses, and where are the patients going to be treated then?
Doctor, we have a question. We're just opening the floor to questions. There are many people with a lot of frontline work as volunteers. So we have a question from Ms. Gayatri Nayak. Is there any alternative medicine for remdesivir?
So, alternative medicine to remdesivir is not yet come. There were rounds of, the rumors that there is something called tocilizumab. I'm sorry, I don't know the pronunciation properly, but that's a 40,000 injection per vial, per dose,
Okay.
which is come into the market as a last resource for any deteriorating patient. So that is the other choice which has come. And other than that is plasma therapy. But other than remdesivir, wonder drug, the medications that we can give is favipiravir for a person who is not very bad. That is, I would say, around 80, oxygen levels are above 80. There's a medicine called favipiravir, which also helps. So basically, this and remdesivir and all these medications, what they do is they prevent or they reduce the replication of the virus. Our mainstay of treatment, which continues for many, many days and weeks, is blood thinners. So I would say, early interventions, or even if the patient is coming with 86 and 84 oxygen, if even remdesivir is not available, we are starting early blood thinners. We can still save this patient.
Okay, but that needs early intervention. That needs the doctors to be.
Say suppose patient has come late, his oxygen level is 86, we don't have remdesivir.
Okay.
As I said, what does COVID do? It causes blood thickening. So we need to give blood thinners as early as possible, injectables, and we can still save this patient.
Okay. So anybody has any questions, please. I think Raju is asking, aspirin is the blood thinner.
Yes, there are 2 types of blood thinners. One is called NOACs, that is novel anticoagulants or newer anticoagulants. They have a different pathway of making the blood watery. And ecosprin has a different pathway of making the blood watery. It is like saying you have 2 types of 2 ways to make a dish. You can either bake it or you can even fry it. So you can do both the ways.
Okay.
But the additive advantages of both are very good. Only ecosprin would not help any individual, and only the other anticoagulant would help any individual. But adding an ecosprin increases the chances of recovery and improves the blood consistency to being watery in a more better level. And of course, this has to be given under guidance of a doctor, because some people overdose and they can even have bleeding episodes because of over thinning their blood. So this has to be given under physician's guidance. Nevertheless, the blood thinners, as you said, ecosprin or aspirin is one of them. And another one is, most important one is called as anticoagulants.
Okay. Dr. Akhil has a question here. Any suggestions on which oximeter to buy? I think this comes on the backdrop of none of the branded products are available. So it's a local ones, a quick comment on that.
Doctor, you are muted.
Am I there?
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah. So, I personally use Dr. Trust and Morpan. But anything. Yeah, actually, you go with the reviews, Raju. Sorry, who has this question?
Akhil.
Akhil, go with the reviews and also check for yourself, because anything can come up with a manufacturing defect. So you need to put the batteries, of course, well-charged batteries, because a low battery even can cause a low oxygen level. So you need to see that the batteries are good, new ones, and keep it. How you should check the oxygen levels? You must keep the oximeter for 60 seconds or at least minimum 30 seconds, and wait for the oxygen level to stabilize. Because initially, when you keep, everybody will show 98, 99, and quickly people take it off. But what's important is to keep it for 30 seconds and see the oxygen level at the end of 30 seconds. and if that is normal, then your oximeter is working well.
So, Sudeep, I got one, doctor, I got one question. This oxygen level goes down only in the COVID infected case, or it can be in other cases also? Is the indication of COVID, or it can happen in other cases, oxygen level?
So oxygen level can go low only in another case where the patient is asthmatic or is a chronic smoker. So a smoker having a wheezing, like, when you hear the sound like that from the chest,
Okay.
that is called wheezing. So that is called wheezing. And any wheezing patient will have a low oxygen. But again, this wheezing patient has to be checked for COVID.
Okay. So that means oxygen level is the clear indication of this COVID infection.
Yes, and also given a person with 97, 98, 99 also can be a COVID person, but they can be asymptomatic carriers, unfortunately.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So it looks like nobody is spared.
Yeah.
Looks like, yes.
Yeah. So anyway, we can take offline what to do with the asymptomatic people, how to be preventive and how to take action, immediate action before reaching hospitalization. Maybe we can take it offline and see how,
So-
how to reach more people. Yeah.
Gayatri, she has already explained it in the beginning.
Yeah.
Maybe when
Yeah,
you
I came
listen
from
to the
other meeting.
recording.
Yeah, correct. No problem.
So, doctor, there is this huge capacity buildup happening, which my friend here, Raju, who's been working with BBMP, I think 12 centers with 2,100 bed capacity has come up today. Right, Raju? That is today. So,
Yes, Sudeep. Yeah.
yeah, is that sufficient? Because
I believe they've also got some 10 ventilators or some 12 ventilators. That's what we've got the information that Amazon has gifted them a whole bunch of ventilators, which has to be distributed.
okay, but is that enough? 12 sounds like a small number.
I think even one is going to make a difference for some individual. So,
okay. Yeah, from that way, yes, of course. Okay. But with the caseload increasing in Bangalore, doctor, what is your fraternity in the front line? Because we read a lot of data and statistics from people like us, but with this lockdown, will we see the weaning or the waning to happen over the next 6 to 7 days? And the caseload, the hospitals will be able to handle the caseload, and there is going to be a cut in the spread of the virus?
so anything is welcome. MP, many ventilators which has to find out where is that going. And
Okay.
anyway,
Doctor, I think we are losing you.
hello.
Yeah, hello.
Yeah.
Doctor, you are back.
Yeah, doctor,
Yeah.
I have one question, Shashi here. So basically,
Yeah,
a
Mr.
diabetic patient will always have this tiredness and what do you say, because of low sugar. So how can I differentiate between that he's COVID positive, and how can I differentiate the symptoms of COVID positive tiredness and diabetic tiredness? Is there any
So
parameter?
actually, a diabetic person, if his sugars are very well controlled, he will not have tiredness. He may have some vitamin deficiencies. So the tiredness in COVID patients come because of drop in oxygen. It will not come to a person who is having a good oxygen level. Say 96, 97 is still good for a diabetic. Like they will not have any symptoms. But if this person who's diabetic is gone from 96 oxygen to 95, then you must start worrying.
Okay. Yep.
So I have a question here from Tahira. People are suggesting oxygen concentrators as an alternative. Is that advisable?
Oxygen concentrators are for people whose oxygen is already low already given COVID treatment, and we have told them to discharge and take home oxygen, because these people will need oxygen for at least 2 to 3 months for recovery. So if I have to give you a scenario, patient A comes with oxygen of say 90, and over the days of course in the hospital, his oxygen falls to 80, 81. Treatment all given, and after a week his oxygen picks up to 85. Now anyone with less than 91, 90 oxygen is going to be at risk for collapsing. Like they can have any heart attack, or they can have any irregular heartbeats, and they can collapse. And that is why individual is going to be discharged with treatment, and who still oxygen levels are 86, 85, we need to discharge them with oxygen. So such people, we give them portable oximeters or concentrators. What a concentrator does is it removes oxygen from the atmosphere, and it concentrates it and gives it to the mask. So gone are the days when we used to give cylinders, big cylinders. But now people can have a concentrator where it takes the atmospheric oxygen, converts that to oxygen. Takes the atmosphere, converts it to oxygen, and gives it to the patient. So it is advisable for people to have oxygen concentrators. And now what we are seeing is a trend where everyone wants to buy it and keep it at home as a standby. I don't think there's a problem, because atmosphere is free and they're just going to remove oxygen. Just plant more trees and see that oxygen is replaced. I think that's what I would say. I don't think there's a problem in keeping oxygen concentrator, and just use it if at all, there's a COVID patient who's recovering, use it for them. For people who are having anything about 94 oxygen and they're COVID positive, you don't need a oxygen concentrator, you don't need oxygen. 94, 95 is all enough. And of course, normal individuals do not need oxygen concentrator.
Okay, thanks. Doctor.
Is these two drugs toxiliumab and isiliumab? These are two alternatives for remdesivir. I'm not able to pronounce it properly. Is that the one?
Yeah, I've told that it's used as a last resort for any deteriorating patient if you're affordable, because one vial costs 45,000 rupees. So if the patient is affordable, then yes, the hospital will happily procure and give it. But I really don't see the worth there because this patient who's going to almost die, usually it is reserved for those kind of deteriorating patients. Otherwise, I think remdesivir does its stuff there at that point of oxygen level.
Okay. Any further questions anyone has?
See, basically one last question from me. If
please.
See, a patient is in home quarantine, because we are getting conflicting days of home quarantine. Some says 14, some says 17, and some is saying 21. So what is it? How many days are you supposed to home quarantine with mild or negligible symptoms?
See, the problem is these all days are being tailor-made for individual for corporates, for making them happy. To tell the fact, I would say 21 days. Why? Because the virus can still be active in these individuals even for 21 days. People the bureaucracy has changed it to 14 days because they want economy. They want economy to.
So I have
Hello.
But Singapore has made 21 days now. Singapore.
So I have one question, doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah, that these concentrators, are they useful when somebody needs oxygen and oxygen is not available as a stopgap measure?
See, oxygen concentrator gives 5 liters of oxygen, and it basically it is the amount of oxygen that it can give. When we give through a cylinder, we can give more than 5 liters. We can go up to even 15 liters. So why we give an oxygen concentrator is this person may require only maybe 2 liters or 3 liters or maximum 5 liters. Anything beyond 5 liters is not advisable to keep oxygen concentrator. So it depends on how much oxygen is required by the patient.
Yeah, because why I'm asking, because in my apartment building, they are buying some concentrators for the emergency use. hearing you, we feel that it's more useful for the people who require the oxygen post treatment for longer period of time to
Correct.
stabilize.
Correct. So now what has happened, as usually that is what we do, but now what has happened is it's very difficult to get beds for people who are infected. So what has happened is now the trend is that they're getting oxygen concentrators to give oxygen to these individuals till they get a bed. So
Yeah,
we have
that's what
two kinds of people. So that is why if I say suppose this patient A is infected and the oxygen has dropped to 86, we have already tried 3 days, no bed, then we take a teleconsultation, start the medications, give the home oxygen through the home concentrator. So that is why.
so that's what I meant. That's what I meant by stopgap arrangement kind of thing.
Yes, ma'am. That is also possible. We can use it for them also. It's in fact advisable also to do that.
Thanks.
So thanks, doctor. I think you might have a hard stop. But thanks for taking out. It's a lot of time you are given, 1 hour, on your we heard your work hours, so it's a lot of time you have taken from you. Thanks, really appreciate that. And so probably we can probably reach you through if we need anything at a later point of time with your permission. So look forward and wish you all the best on your work, and thanks a lot again, appreciate a lot of the inputs which you have given so far.
No problem. So you can reach out to me on my number, but I would just appreciate a WhatsApp message
Yeah,
in
sure.
case any individual has any queries. Of course, I would reply maybe at midnight or so.
Yeah.
But you can take my number down.
Or probably we can
I
moderate.
have the number. I will share it with everyone. I have your number, doctor.
We'll moderate through Abha only.
I'm open to any question because the need of the hour is awareness, and the need of the hour is early screening, early intervention, and to kick this virus out of our country as soon as we can.
Yeah. All the best to all of us.
Yes.
Thank you very much, doctor.
Yeah, thanks
Yeah,
so much.
thank you, madam. Thank you, Sudhi. Thank you, Abha, madam. So take care, all of you, and please buy an oximeter. That's a request from my side. Even your maids, we check our maids' oxygen levels. We check our oxygen levels every day. Whoever's interacting outside, please sanitize yourselves. And I would say, please don't wear any cloth mask. Try and wear a good surgical mask.
Yep.
And whoever's wearing a mask should be above the mouth, on the nose. Many individuals have the mask hanging between their nose and their mouth, and there is a tendency to put the mask down and talk and pull it back. So please do not do that. And please also educate others that the more they touch their, masks and then touch again everywhere else, they're going to spread the virus.
Yeah, sure, doctor. So, but what is this double masking, which has been going around, Dr. Fockey telling this? Is it for real, the double mask?
Yes, I think double masking helps because the more protected you are, the better.
Okay.
I wear 3 masks.
Oh, yeah, and we understand that, of course.
So 3 masks and a face shield, because, unfortunately, the virus is really bad, and even a little entry into your system, the virus will replicate into trillions, and that's it. You just don't have to wait for a huge load to come into you. A few viruses inside the system, and they'll take your cells and multiply inside. So why give it that room?
Yeah. Oh, got it, doctor. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, actually, it's brave of all of you. I just can't imagine being in the place where you are. So
that's okay. I think we're just doing our duty, and God has assigned us this duty, so we're just doing that.
No, that's how
just
you
pray that pray for all of us.
Yes.
And thank you, all of you, for your time.
Yes. Thanks so much.
All you volunteers are,
bless you, doctor.
of course,
God bless you. You are a God for all of us. Yeah.
Please don't tell that, madam. God will feel bad that you're comparing me with him.
God
I think we are just,
God is in everywhere, but he comes through some people. Definitely, because I've undergone 3 operations.
We are just a channel to.
I've undergone 3 operations. Always, my surgeon is God for me. He gave me life 3 times. So I respect that. I got a lot of doctors. So God bless you. Only dua. You give a dawa and we give dua for your protection. Okay.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Very nice to hear you, madam. And God bless you. And I hope you have good health.
Yeah.
Every day and all days.
Thank you. God bless you.
Okay, Ms. Sudeep. Okay, Abha, madam. I will take your leave. Take care.
Doctor,
Thank
I think Doctor, there is one quick question which has come, if you don't mind.
Yeah, tell me.
Covishield or Covaxin? I think this is a big
Okay.
question.
So I would say Covaxin, but given I have taken Covishield, I don't think there's a problem. Only thing is efficacy is 10% more in Covaxin.
Okay.
Nevertheless, whatever you take, Covishield, Covaxin, we have seen individuals coming with both injections with an infection.
Okay.
So even if you're vaccinated with either of the vaccines, please don't put the masks down. The virus can still infect you. The only thing is the severity can be less. Whether you take a Covaxin or Covishield, the severity will be less if you get infected. So anything is fine.
Yeah, and the gap between those two, like, it has been increased to whatever 8 to 12 weeks or something like that.
Yeah, I would say 8 weeks ideally. 8
Ideally.
weeks.
8 weeks.
Yes. 12 weeks is a little long. I would say 8 weeks is good.
So 8 weeks or a little longer? What is better?
8 weeks is good. 8 weeks is
Optimal.
good.
8 weeks is optimal. Okay. Yeah,
Yes,
great, doctor.
yes.
We'll not hold you again. Please.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, take care, madam. Take care, sir. Bye-bye.
Thanks everyone, like, for participating also, like, so
Yes,
probably
Sudeep, can you and a couple of more people stay back in the meeting?
yeah, sure.
Maybe Prakash, Raju.
Yeah, and
Gayatri.
everybody else is also welcome if people want to.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, so just want to recap, like, because unlike other meetings, like, we need to recap it quickly here.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Abha. You want to go ahead with something?
No, that's what recap and the next steps. So I wanted to discuss next steps with a smaller group and then communicate it to the rest of the group. But recap, yes, would be good.
Yeah, I think for the hospital part, like, I don't think we have an answer. Obviously, like, she's not administrator. Yeah, doctor, go on.
Hey,
yeah,
Sudeep, you're talking to me?
Yeah,
okay. I agree with most of it, what the doctor said. Probably experiences and knowledge vary from doctor to doctor. As I said, 97 might be a little bit difficult given the oxygen saturation. If you are asymptomatic and if you're 97 or 96, the reason being a lot of COPD, that is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and asthma are quite common with bronchitis, chronic bronchitis. So they will obviously have a lower saturation. So when the COVID is superimposed on these people, so if they don't have COVID and if they have 92, you should also rule out the medical background, check what they have been suffering from before. Next thing is, I personally feel 93 is a good number to watch out for. You reach 93 from a previous number, which is very important, because if you have, as I said, asthma or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, that 93, they might start off in 93 itself all the time. So, but if you are 97, 98, in the next 3 days, you come down to 94, 93, 92. That means there is a compromise in your lung function. So that is when you start hitting 93 and below, you start looking for placement. Because given the dearth of bed availability, so we need to proactively take matters into hand before it reaches a critical stage. Meet a doctor, get a HRCT done, those things. Then when do we go to a hospital? 90 and below is the best time to go, especially if you are elderly, if you have comorbidities and any other lung diseases. So then you go there and get treated. Regarding remdesivir with the HRCT score, if you have 10 and above, is the best time to start. So more than the oxygen concentration, probably her clinical expertise, she has put a number for 86, fine. But if you give remdesivir too late, it doesn't have that much of an effect of it. So, but however, early or the right timing you use, remdesivir has not shown any improvement in mortality. People who progress to severe this thing, it cannot stop them. So there is no, it is not now, even the CDC, WHO and all, they have said there is no evidence to prove remdesivir works to prevent mortality. The next drug, the most important drug, is dexamethasone. So this dexamethasone is a steroid, and steroids are the primary mainstay to prevent fibrosis in the lungs or thickening of the septum. So the giving of steroid are all based on certain factors. Even what do you call tocilizumab or itolizumab, they are also used, but in very little people it is effective. I think 4%. What these tocilizumab does is, when they have reached the hospital already and gotten remdesivir, and you see that it is worsening, they do some tests called IL-6, which is called interleukin 6, and D-dimer and C-reactive protein and LDH. These are the inflammatory markers. So especially IL-6, interleukin 6 is the most important test for people who are going bad. This predicts cytokine storm. So when this IL-6 value is high, that is when you give, because as a last resort, because how the COVID works is two parts. First one is reaction to the virus, first 1 week. The second week is the body's reaction to the virus, where the immune system goes on a hyperdrive. That is what is cytokine storm. So what it does, it starts attacking the lungs. So that's when the most damage is done, not by the virus, but by your immune system. This is where dexamethasone comes in to prevent that. It decreases your immune system. So what it does, it prevents that further damage. So the period from 8 to 12 days, 13 days, most important for people who go really bad. So you have to watch out, especially people who are hospitalized. So what COVID is considered or was being considered as a pulmonary disease, which causes pulmonary disease, but it's not so. We have come to understand, and it's being termed as COVID-associated coagulopathy, CAC. What it does is, we have a coagulation system in our body to prevent prevent our body from bleeding. So different cascades are there. In COVID especially acts on the tissue factor, which eats up the platelet, so, and forms clumps. So she said blood thickening. It's not the viscosity, it is the platelets actually clumping and forming clots. So the COVID, the tissue factor produces this, causes this, and then whole lot of clumps are in every part of the body. So it can go into the blood vessel of the heart, coronary vessels. It can cause a heart attack. It can go to the brain, cause a stroke. Go to the kidney, affect the kidney failure. It can go to your deep veins in your legs, cause DVT, and that DVT can cause gangrene, and that DVT can dislodge that thrombus. DVT is deep vein thrombosis. That thrombus can go up your leg and lodge in your lungs. It can cause pulmonary embolism and quick death. So it's now no longer a primarily lung disorder or lung disease. It can affect any part of the body. So it is a multi-organ disease. That's why people who die of COVID usually die of multi-organ failure, multi-organ death. So along with this, what happens? You also get bacterial infection superimposed on the viral infection because the lungs are down. So then what happens is, if you don't treat it, you get septicemia. As the doctor said, we give blood thinners. Blood thinners are of two types. One is the anticoagulant, the other one is the antiplatelet. Both of them in conjunction with each other is the best thing. So anticoagulant, we mostly use low molecular weight heparin, which is an injectable under the skin, but it has to be given in the hospital. Unless you are discharged with heparin, a low molecular weight heparin, it can be given by a nurse in your house. So what this does is, the anticoagulant decreases the stickiness of the platelets to clump into another. Whereas antiplatelet doesn't allow the platelets to come in touch with one another. So these two work in different ways towards the same goal. So together they give the best result. But the disadvantage or the drawback to this anticoagulant and antiplatelet, which is like antiplatelet is somebody was asking, is aspirin or clopidogrel, or that is Plavix. So anticoagulant is heparin or enoxaparin, things like that. So only drawback to this is if you don't carefully monitor, apart from preventing the clots or breaking down the clots, there are other things which also are thrombolytics, which break down the clots. What it will do is cause the natural clotting to go down and cause bleeding in the brain or bleeding under the skin or anywhere the hemorrhaging can happen. That can lead to a hemorrhagic stroke in the brain. So the doctors have to do a test, which is what we call PTT and INR, those tests, and platelet count. So to see how it is going. So they have to balance the treatment so that they get the best benefit out of the treatment. The next thing is, I forgot, I wanted to tell something else what the doctor raised. So dexamethasone is one of the most important drugs in the treatment of COVID, the steroid, especially serious cases. Mild to moderate can do well at home, and they can recover within 2 weeks time. Now the policy is for mild to moderate is 10 days of quarantine and 1 day without any fever and other symptoms. If you have loss of taste, loss of smell, that's okay. That will take month, 2 months. But as long as you don't have fever, sore throat, those things, one day. But I always prefer it to go to 2 weeks, even though it is advisory is ICMR and others, CDC. It is 10 days. I would advise them to go for 2 weeks, and then symptom-free period for at least 2 days, 2 to 3 days. But in serious cases, we should go up to 20 days to make sure. Well, next question is, what if I get a RT-PCR done and if I'm negative? Then I'm okay, right? But what you should understand how the virus spreads. The COVID virus, it goes through your nose or your mouth when you're in the public. Then it goes lodges in your nasopharynx and oropharynx. Nasopharynx is a place behind the nose, just above the throat, and the oropharynx is where you have your tonsils, those places. This is where the reservoir will be there. That is when you first get affected. This is where it is before the symptoms start. That is the incubation period. So then it travels to the lungs where it causes all this damage. So a person who is discharged after 2 weeks and is fine, and you insist on RT-PCR, is a waste of time and resource. Getting a RT-PCR done at the end of 2 weeks or 3 weeks, because all you will have is viral particles. So it doesn't make sense to do. You will get a negative. In fact, the timing of RT-PCR is very important. Suppose you get, in fact, you know somebody, met somebody, they have been RT-PCR positive or a known COVID patient. You met them today. You do the RT-PCR test tomorrow because you're scared, and you'll come back negative. And people will think, I am RT-PCR negative. I don't have COVID. But you will always get it negative, RT-PCR negative, even if you have COVID, because it takes time for the virus to replicate. The replication virus, it will take minimum 4 to 5 days. So best time to do RT-PCR testing is between 5th and the 8th day, or the 9th day also. Then it starts going down again. So RT-PCR is only positive 70 to 75% of the time. The rest 25%, even though they are negative, they test negative, they're still positive. But one good thing is RT-PCR, if you're positive, that means you are positive. There is no false positive here. But the remaining 25% who test negative can be positive. So that you should consider. The timing of the test you should consider, very important. And at home, as she said, and I spoke yesterday, we should have a pulse oximeter in everyone's home, because that is the best way to know if you're going downhill. Okay. Regarding what she said, I had little this thing is about lying down. She preferred standing up. So you can't be standing in one place. That means you have to move. That means there is a physical exertion. And if your oxygen is going down, physical, any activity will eat up, will have a demand on the lungs. So lying down is also not good for extended periods. It will cause clots and other things, and circulation will be poor. So you need to stretch, you need to do deep breathing, everything. But lying down, especially something called proning, that is sleeping on your stomach, will increase your aeration. The lungs will expand to the maximum when you sleep on your tummy. She said sleeping decreases, sleeping on your back decreases. Sleeping on your stomach, which is a prone position, gives you the best possible oxygen saturation. So a lot of people don't know about this. A lot of doctors don't know about it, the proning, this thing. We should tell everybody whom we know, whether they have COVID or not, learn to practice to sleep on your tummy. That is the best way to increase. Somebody, if is 92, we can still increase it to 94, 95, because the lungs expand more. So that is very important. We should tell everybody whom we meet. And these are the things. I think there are some more things which I wanted to talk about, but probably as Ms. Abbas said, she will put the recording in the group. I'll go through it and remember
Yes,
what I
yes.
need to say. So, there is no remdesivir, is no magic bullet. Okay,
Yes.
time and again has been showed. Only thing which actually prevents for the damage is steroids. So I want people to know timing of the next one more point is the HRCT, which Sudeep had told me. Send me some reports. If you do a HRCT after 15 days or after discharge or without going home, so what these people will have is they still have changes. So you need not worry about it, because usually within 2 to 3 weeks, it will heal in majority of the case. There are people who will take 6 months or who will always have some symptoms. They'll still have shortness of breath. They will have those. But majority of them, 2 to 3 weeks, if you repeat a HRCT, not immediately after discharge, 2 to 3 weeks after discharge, the what we call GGO, the ground glass opacities or crazy wave pattern, all those will go away. Even the thickening, the septal thickening will go away. So, so in the meantime, you should just slowly get into your routine, not overly so, not go run. I used to run 5 kilometers, so I'll run. No, don't, because your lungs are still healing. So these are the things. So if I come across any, if I remember anything, I will say. But one more important thing is people who are asymptomatic. How do we know when to test or when to know they are negative? So, because obviously, see how we, with symptomatic patients, day 0 is the first day you get the symptoms. So we count from that. So from that day, 2 weeks. From day 0, the first day of the symptoms, 2 weeks. So, but in asymptomatics, they don't have symptoms. How do we know? But they get a RT-PCR because they are the proximity to somebody who has COVID. So they go test it. So take that as day 1 when they test positive. So for them, we can give them 10 days in these cases. So mild to moderate, we can give 15 days, even though they have cut it down internationally to 10 days. And severe ones, we can take up to 20 days. So
Good
anybody have a
amount of
question?
information.
Yeah, anybody have any question? I can put it in layman terms, but the thing is steroids are very important, and oxygen saturation is the main criteria where you should keep watching. And Yeah.
I think it
And
would be good if
discuss.
somebody can put the salient point of this call somewhere, is in a bullet point format for people to easily understand, because this about 2 hour,
Yeah.
1.5 hour meeting.
Yeah.
Sudeep, you are
But
muted. You
the
are muted.
last one sentence I would like to say, people always thought it is a droplet infection. Okay.
Yeah,
Now research have been shown that it can spread through
read through
aerial
air
route.
also.
Okay. Okay. So it can stay in the air for quite some time. So people have to be careful. People might have left a room half an hour ago. It might be empty, and you think I'm safe, and you remove a mask, and then it might be in the air room. This thing, especially when you have AC, it might circulate. So you still need to mask up, except in open air when nobody is there. I think that is pretty okay, because I hope so, because it breeze will take care of it.
Yeah.
But it's no longer a droplet infection. Droplet infection could be prevented just by wearing a cloth mask. So, but because the size, the micron size of the droplet is big enough, so this can be blocked. That's why people used to say, don't touch your mask and touch your nose, because it will transfer to your nose, a hand, and then transfer to the nose. But if it is not droplet, we're talking about atmospheric air, that means it will stay in the air for long, and it can go through your mask also. So get a good quality mask. Wash it every day if it is a cloth mask. Please, some people tend to use the same thing for 2-3 days. It's not good. So even the surgical mask or 3-ply, you need to change it after the evening is finished. Throw it, dispose it off carefully, and then get a new mask to wear. So you have to be careful. And one good news about the vaccine is not entirely proved. Covaxin, the double mutant virus which we are facing now, which is causing all this trouble, goes by the name B1.617. So this has 2 mutations. Same on the UK, this thing. So it has one more mutation on its surface. So this one, we didn't, our old vaccines, let it be the one in Moderna or Pfizer one, wouldn't work on it, because they were manufactured quite early, like July last year. So the testing was done that early. So this one, the mutation came only in November, December. So nobody has a chance to test on it. But what Dr. Fauci from US is the one infectious disease expert who was in Trump government and all. He's still with Biden. So what he has said today is Covaxin seems to be effective with double mutant B1.617. So that's good news, because that is what we are facing in India, the double mutation. So that is prevalent. The UK variant is prevalent. The South African and the Brazil, they are in small numbers. But whichever vaccine you take at least one vaccine. Don't worry of what is there, what is not there. See, the efficacy, you might get COVID. That is what it says. 95% is Pfizer, Moderna is 94. But it doesn't matter in the final this thing, because when you take the vaccine and you are exposed to virus, the severity of the virus, I can share it in the group. Somebody has done a report of a COVID patient getting reinfected. One who has been vaccinated and getting infected with COVID. They were positive. And the one without vaccine, I'll share the both chest x-rays, chest CTs. So you will see the difference. There will be infection, but very mild. Whereas one without vaccine, even if it is not for the strain, it is for if it is a different mutated virus, it still will not affect you that severely. So the mortality rate will go down a lot.
Yeah. So we have two questions about vaccine. One is from Sujaya. How about the Covishield vaccine?
Yeah. So see, there is a Covishield as what we call AstraZeneca 1. So it is basically safe, effective, but in a small, minute number of people, especially women, and also men also, but women more in Europe. So especially younger people, less than 50 kind of people. Now in UK, they have made it 30, below 30 shouldn't get it. But what it caused is a rare clotting in the cavernous sinus. So this caused deaths. And now Pfizer has joined that list. So that they had stopped it. Now they have restarted it, but with a warning that it could cause in some people. But the number of people who get affected by it is very, very low. Okay. So the chance of what you call those mortality due to this rarest of rare cases is, I think you have to take a chance, because you can get hit by lightning too if you walk out on the street, right?
Yeah.
So it's like that, because COVID can kill you faster than the side effect, because the number of mutations which are coming up every day, we don't know which one will come when. At least if you get infected, you will not be so seriously affected by the COVID infection. So this is what I have to say.
Yes, I have a question about masking, and then I will go back to other questions. One is that now they are suggesting that you should be masked at home also. So I
Correct.
generally do it when I have helpers around,
Correct.
because they come from outside, and so that's a rule. But I have been using cloth mask till now. Now,
Okay.
listening to you, I think it would be advisable to use the surgical masks.
Yeah, surgical mask is always better than cloth mask.
Yeah.
Okay. Given the rate of the surge in the cases, I would always advise to go with at least N95 is the best.
Yeah.
But the thing is, we are not in such an environment like in hospital or things like that. So 3-ply would be good enough. Okay. Or a surgical mask. But as long as you keep putting on a new one, you don't use the same thing, because they tend to get dirty very fast and trap all the things.
Yeah. How about disinfecting them in the disinfection? I have a disinfectant box.
Disinfect which one?
Yeah. Sorry? The mask.
You want to which mask?
Surgical mask.
No.
Should
Their effectiveness goes away.
Okay.
Okay. So once the pores which are so close together, once you have used it, because of the air, the pollution, dust and all, they get clogged up, or you can see the piling coming out like thready kind of thing. So no matter of disinfectant will make it effective again. You have to use a new one.
Okay. So now again, similar related question is, how about the spread by surface contamination?
It is there. It's not zero, but it's very low. Okay. So best practice is, if you go outside, do shopping or go to the office, touch something, never touch your face. First thing you go, after you do all that, touch your car door or anything, go for the hand wash. That is the best, better than sanitizer. If you don't have access to it, use a sanitizer.
Yeah. Okay. So now Gayatri Naik's question again related. We keep changing surgical mask on a daily basis. The kind of garbage pile we create.
Correct.
How do we manage that?
If you're not going out, I will say use cloth mask.
Yeah.
If you're not going in like where there are more people.
Yeah.
If you are home or where it's not densely populated, then you can use the cloth mask, wash it regularly and reuse it.
Yeah.
But if you're going where, a market or buy vegetables or go in a mall or go somewhere or a restaurant also, people used to go when it was opened up. So it's better to use
N95.
surgical mask.
Yeah.
No, surgical mask.
Surgical mask, double masking.
You can do double masking. Always wear the surgical mask inside and
Yeah,
put the cloth
and-
mask outside.
or outside, yeah.
It still can't prevent the COVID from going in because COVID is much smaller. Okay, but
Yeah.
but the thing is, we are preventing the droplets
Yeah.
coming.
Some prevention is there.
Yeah.
How about what is the right way of disposing of those surgical masks? Because it can, the garbage cleaners are coming. Not always they have the gloves and other things.
Right.
So
This
how do
is
we get?
this is where BBMP is lacking in direction. Somebody has to come out with it because it has been there since 1 year. It's going to stay for probably 1 year or more. So for health related, the bio waste, what we call,
Yeah.
you should have a different colored bag
Okay.
or different collection point, different people to put it in a different system, because this needs to be sent to an incinerator. Okay, just like any bio waste or biomedical waste.
Correct.
So it is not just to be thrown somewhere, go in a land yard and throw it. So our handling also, they should be taught how to handle it. So because you should just do like how blood or dressing in a hospital, how they dispose it off, they have to do it the same way. So in fact, if we collect any disposable mask, it's our duty to put it in a different bag, not in the regular garbage.
Yeah.
At
And,
least that we can do.
How about wrapping it in a newspaper or something, like we dispose the sanitary
Because
napkins?
see, right.
And
See,
then
what
put it in the separate bag.
Correct. But when it is being incinerated, they will remove the newspaper.
Yeah. So that newspaper will become infected.
Correct.
Okay. So there's one more question. Sorry. Yeah, Gayatri, go ahead. Go ahead.
I had one more question. No, once person is positive,
Yeah.
and when they get cured, how many days we have to keep a distance from that person?
It's, as I said, mild to moderate, 2 weeks, and at least 2-3 days of, after the 2 weeks, 2-3 days of having no symptoms. Okay, if it is a severe case, at least 20-21 days, and same 2-3 days of without any. See, the kind of symptoms which still persists is you might have little difficulty in breathing, but saturation would have improved a little bit. Then your loss of taste, loss of smell will continue. That doesn't mean you have to stay away from them. Okay, the time frame we always look at is when the replication virus stops, replication of the virus, that is multiplication of the virus. So that is the time frame which people have observed, 2 weeks and 3 weeks time. But now it has come down to 10 days, but I will always go with 2 weeks.
Okay. Yeah, good amount of information.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
No problem. We're all part of the same group. So
Yeah. Sudeep?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
so
Thanks.
will you wrap this meeting and we reconvene? Or
Yeah,
how do
let's
you?
do that.
Sorry?
Let's do that. Like, just
Yeah.
I'll circulate key points what we had taken. So, like, so then we can perhaps think of the next steps, like, between today and tomorrow.
Yeah, so maybe
so-
tomorrow morning, if people are available, at least we can discuss it on the chat, maybe separately.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So done.
Okay.
So,
Yeah,
thanks,
thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you. Thanks.
I hope we'll make something we can contribute for this cause.
Yeah.
Let us see what we can.
Thank you. Good night.
Yeah,
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good
Bye.
night.
Bye.